Arakshi seeking, as of now, the likes of Parliament Speaker Mohammed Kalibaf. Prime Minister Netanyahu, meanwhile, addressed the reports in his first public comments since Trump's announcement. Have a listen.
מוקדם יותר היום שוחחתי עם ידידנו הנשיא לממש את יעדי המלחמה בהסכם. הסכם שישמור על האינטרסים החיוניים שלנו. במקביל, אנחנו ממשיכים לתקוף גם באיראן וגם בלבנון. אנחנו קודשים את תוכנית הטילים ותוכנית הגרעין עד דק וממשיכים לפגוע קשות בחיזבאללה. רק לפני ימים אחדים חיסלנו עוד 2 מדעני גרעין והיד עוד נטויה. אנחנו נשמור על האינטרסים החיוניים שלנו בכל מצב.
Now, Israel is not engaged in the talks, taking a backseat to diplomacy, as the IDF releases this morning that more than 3,000 IRGC and regime targets were attacked so far, including last night's strikes on ballistic missile capabilities and various command centers of all IRGC branches. The IDF added that these strikes are aimed at damaging the core system and the foundations of the Islamic regime, saying that the IDF will continue to attack until instructed otherwise. And joining me now to break down these latest developments is our panel of experts. I am pleased to welcome to the show Ambassador Yoram Ettinger, an expert on U.S.-Israel relations, and Brigadier General in the Reserves Harel Knafo, the former Chief of Staff of the IDF's Southern Command. Thank you both for coming on the show today. So, gentlemen, I'd love to start by getting both of your takes on the latest from Washington. Is it too early for talks at this point? Or is this just, posturing to achieve more military gains without jeopardizing the economic state of the world right now? Ambassador Ettinger, if you can start us off.
Well, I would say, in principle, I suggest to pay attention or accord more weight to walk rather than talk. Statements are made, statements were made, but the most important thing is the actual action on the ground. And on the ground, we have seen the largest ever American armada assembled in order to change the regime in Iran. The major question is, are we witnessing now a change in the direction which I personally doubt, because with all due respect, negotiation with the Ayatollah regime, agreement with the Ayatollah regime play into the hands of the Ayatollah regime and their intrinsic aim, intrinsic 1,400-year-old ideology to bring the great American Satan to submission. We are watching now a testing time for the resolve of the U.S. and Israel. Are we going to witness them sacrificing long-term national security on the altar of short-term economic, financial, and diplomatic convenience? Or are they going to highlight long-term national security, which requires dismantling Ayatollah regime? And last and not least, the U.S. should not assume that the president of Venezuela, when the deputy tyrant or deputy despot has taken over from the chief despot, applies to Iran. In Venezuela, we had a despot who was a criminal. In Tehran, they are not criminals. They are satanically subjecting themselves to an ideology, but they act driven by an ideology. And that ideology supersedes, transcends any diplomatic, any financial consideration or bonanza. And therefore, again, the goal should be to stick to the mission until regime change And without regime change, there will not be a real victory by the US and Israel.
Mm-hmm. And so, I personally, Ambassador Ettinger, couldn't agree more. But Harel Knafo, if I could get your take, do you think it's posturing at this point, or is there real legitimacy to these talks?
I suggest that you look back to the beginning of this war, while the Americans weren't ready yet, and they had to bring a lot of aircrafts to the scene, and it took them something about 3 weeks to do so. And even then, Donald Trump so-called negotiated, or his people negotiated with the Iranians. I think it's only for earning time to bring all the aircrafts to the Middle East. And he did it, and he opened fire by total surprise, which means that the talking was only to stall some time, to be more ready to this strike. I think now it's the same. The only problem that you have, that you cannot continue at the same way to strike Iran, is almost a place where ships cannot go in and out for time being. And again, Donald Trump have to stall a bit more time for his forces to come to the Middle East. Now it will be a ground forces, basically infantry or others to conquer or to take the islands in the midst of Hormuz place. And when they will be ready to do it, they will do it. That's what I think. And now they need time. So how you gain time without letting the markets, the financial markets, to fall down? You give ultimatum, and then you give another more 5 days, and you gain more time. And the financial markets are okay now, and you have enough time to do so. When United States will have the Hormuz in their hands, and we will be able to continue to strike Iran regime, I think we will continue to do so. Now, meanwhile, in those 5 days, United States and Israel strike even harder and harming the foundation stones of this terrified or this terrible regime. And in 5 days, we will be in another situation. And I hope that we will continue to do so until this regime will fall down.
Absolutely. But I do have a rebuttal for both of you, actually, because obviously the last time around when negotiations were happening, the United States and Washington did say that Iran was not really taking them as seriously as they should have, which was the cause for the initial beginning of the strike of this war on the Ayatollah Khamenei. That was based off of the information that they were kind of going back and forth and, coming back, after initially agreeing but giving harder demands, and that was unacceptable to Washington. This time around, they're actually insisting on bypassing all of these normal people. I mean, obviously, Ali Larijani, who is dead right now, he's not going to be in this round of talks. Abbas Araghchi is not on the table right now for Washington. They're trying to reach other Iranian officials. Could that perhaps be a sign that they actually are taking this seriously and that they're not interested in all of this back and forth and sort of pointless negotiations that they were engaged in last time? Ambassador Ettinger?
Well, my own assessment, again, based on track record, is that Trump sticks to the original goal of regime change, and I base it on his behavior last June, where, in defiance of all assessments, he joined the Israeli offensive against Iran. He did it in defiance of some of his best social friends, some of his best political friends, and some of his major financial contributors who gave to him and Republican candidates hundreds of millions of dollars. My assumption is that President Trump is open-minded and is adjusting his moves in accordance with reality. Obviously, there are attempts by the isolationists, by the Europeans, and other elements to convince him to drop the goal of regime change. But my assumption that he is clear-minded enough to realize that should he stop short of regime change, this will bolster dramatically the ambitions displayed by China in the Pacific Ocean, in Africa, and in Latin America, which is the US soft underbelly. It's going to bolster the imperial aspirations of Putin with regard to the Baltic states and probably even East Europe, and certainly allowing the Ayatollah regime to remain in place would trigger robust tailwind to anti-American Islamic terrorism, which is already active on US soil and will be more active once there is the phenomena of the US refraining to go all the way, thus projecting to the world at large pretty feeble posture of deterrence. Therefore, while we can go into speculative scenarios, the track record of Donald Trump suggests that he is going to stick with the original goal of regime change because it advances American interests, not on behalf of Israel, but because he's facing right now an enemy of the US, which for the last 47 years has not stopped terrorizing American targets.
Interesting. And Ariel Knafo, your thoughts on that topic as well?
Well, first of all, I totally agree with Yoram. He's said it quite clear. I would add only the perspective of I would say the strike, the war, and I think we don't need too much time from now to end this mess up. I think that the regime hardly control of anything in his the Iranian regime doesn't control almost anything in its own country. They don't know the right hand don't know what the left hand does. Most of the things that they are doing are not coordinated. It's only units in this place or another who act separately with the orders that they got 4 weeks ago. And actually, they hardly do a lot of harm, even though we look upon Israel and we see some of the missiles are engaging to targets in Israel. Still, it's almost nothing in comparison of what the Persians or the Iranians try to do to Israel. So I think that they are losing their power day by day, and I think it will take 1 or 2 weeks from now until we will see that they cannot do almost anything to Israel. And at the same time, the people of Iran, I think they will rise up after they will get announcements from Bibi and from Donald Trump to go out and take off the regime. I think they will do it gladly, and I would think they will have a very good chance to succeed doing so. So in general, we have to continue to strike and strike and strike, and any minute that we have to strike more and more, and of course to take the land of the islands in Hormuz place. And I think that after that we will be able to stop the firing and let the people in Iran do the rest of the job.
I feel like that's definitely the priority, and it's definitely important that we do achieve regime change. Obviously, if that is not achieved, and if Donald Trump were to somehow come up with some diplomatic solution, that would be catastrophic for Israel. But putting that aside in the speculation of these talks, what do we know about the leaders of the Islamic regime? I mean, it seems like they're saying that they want to negotiate, but who are they expected to negotiate with? The assumption here in Israel with Israeli officials is that Iran is denying the allegation of talks and, sort of taking a step back because they're in survival mode and they don't really have the means to be engaging diplomatically. They're just trying to survive. So I'd love to get both of your takes on that. And Editorial, of course, if you could start us off.
Well, the main thing to note is that the definition, the meaning of negotiation is dramatically different in Washington than it is in Tehran. In Washington, the term negotiation is driven by Webster Dictionary, which means a stage to advance reconciliation and hopefully reach peaceful coexistence. In Tehran and throughout most of the Middle East, negotiation means time to lick wounds, time to stall for time, in order to restore capabilities, upgrade capabilities, and then get ready for the next round. And we should not underestimate the capability of the Ayatollahs to restore their capabilities. We keep hearing we have already injured them enough, so it will take them years and years to restore. There's nothing which is farther from truth than such a simplistic assumption, and we should go back to 1967. We crashed completely the Egyptian military infrastructure, but Soviet Union and Egypt together restored the Egyptian military capabilities within a few months, and the Egyptians launched a war of attrition against Israel. Today, the capabilities of restoring the military capabilities of Iran are much more advanced than they were in 1967, and there is a dire Chinese and Russian and North Korean interest to prove to the Americans that their posture of deterrence is very, very substantial, and they want to restore capabilities in Iran for their own interest. And therefore, again, allowing time for negotiation, allowing the Ayatollah regime to remain in place is going to backfire dramatically and in a very self-destructive manner. I trust that the president and certainly Secretary of State and Secretary of War are all aware of it, and therefore the talk is uttered, proclaimed for tactical reasons, but the work of assembling more and more power reflects the actual strategy of regime change.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I do want to slightly pivot, Harel, with you and ask about the situation in Lebanon with Hezbollah. Again, going back to the same point where if we assume that negotiations or talks or some sort of diplomatic solution does arise and that the war could be wrapping up in the coming weeks even, do you think there's a possibility that Trump and Washington could then pressure Israel to halt their campaign against Hezbollah in Lebanon, or are these two separate entities? Because again, that would be catastrophic for Israel if we were stopped short of, completely just getting rid of Hezbollah. What do you think of that?
I think that Israel already made the decision what to do with Lebanon until the Lebanese will try or will be able to do other things. And Israel decided that all the zone between Israel and the Litani River will be a dead zone, will be a zone that nobody will live there until there will be the Lebanese or the rest of the world will be able to disarm Hezbollah, which of course I don't believe that anyone will do it. Therefore, this place will stay as a dead zone as many years from now. And I don't think the Americans will interfere in this matter because basically they already agreed that the Lebanese didn't achieve anything about the last agreement that we have with the Americans, with the Frenchies, and with the French people, and with the Lebanon, and Hezbollah basically interfere in this war and acted against the north of Israel. Therefore, I think we will have the full hand to do whatever we want to do. I would add another thing about Iran. In Iran, you don't have anyone to talk to. I mean, the one who talks to United States consider as a traitor. The head of the parliament who talked to the Americans now consider as a traitor in Iran. Basically, I don't think that any kind of agreement will be achieved, and therefore we will have a lot of time to strike in Lebanon as much as we want. We have a lot of time to strike in Iran as we want. This is my, of course, own assumption or own view, and we will see in days if it will be true or not.
Interesting, and I think that actually a lot of Israelis agree with you on that assessment. We are almost out of time, but Ambassador Ettinger, if I could just get your quick opinion on the cooperation between Israel and the United States. Say, again, same direction, hypothetically, if there is some sort of disagreement between Washington and Jerusalem, say Washington is edging toward diplomacy and Israel is saying that they don't want to cap the war off, what would that sort of cooperation look like? I mean, do the U.S. and Israel have to agree on everything? They're in this joint operation. What can you tell us about that?
U.S. cooperation with Israel is driven by American interest. They don't do it as a gesture to the Jewish state. They do it because they realize it pays off to the U.S. In fact, it pays off tremendously to cooperate with Israel and leverage Israel's unique capabilities. We don't need to agree on everything. We have to agree on the fundamentals. And the common denominator between the US and Israel is vast. It's cultural, it's historical, it's strategic. We have mutual enemies such as Islamic terrorism, the Sunni Islamic terrorism, the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Shiite Islamic terrorism, the Ayatollah regime. There is an American interest also to maintain their global technological lead, and they know that there's no better partner for that than Israel when it comes to providing the giant high-tech corporations in the US with the groundbreaking, game-changing Israeli developments and new applications, and therefore, notwithstanding occasional disagreements, I see continued cooperation between the two countries, and last and not least, for Israel to defy occasional American pressure would be consistent with the state of mind of American president, who would be pleased to see Israel defying pressure, thus acting in a Trumpist manner. President Trump does not wait for green light to cross the street, and when he sees Israel adapting his mode of behavior, he may condemn us publicly in a very rhetorical manner, but behind the scene, he is going to congratulate Israel for finally adapting the Trump way of facing challenges.
And, I think that the whole world might be thanking Israel and the United States when this is all said and done. Harel Knafo, I do want to get your thoughts, but we are unfortunately out of time, so we have to close our panel with that. But I want to thank you both so much for joining. Ambassador Yoram Ettinger, Brigadier General Harel Knafo, thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And now, just a quick message from our partners at Haifa.
At U Haifa International, academic excellence isn't just a standard, it's a way of life. With 21 English-taught master's programs, world-class faculty, and Israel's top national score in the Times Higher Education Impact Rankings, students grow in every direction.
If you really want to challenge yourself academically, grow in a very diverse community, and be immersed in such an important and significant environment, University of Haifa is the place for you.
Located on the stunning Carmel Ridge, the U Haifa blends academic excellence with a welcoming community.
U Haifa International has a great combination of top-notch academics with a great community of students.
Whether you're pursuing a one-year master's or diving into research, U Haifa gives you the tools, mentorship, and real-life insight to make your mark on the world. U Haifa International. Master your mind, live your Israel experience.
And just before we end our broadcast for today, let's go now to our ILTV correspondent, Alec Pollard, who's standing by live in Tel Aviv at the site of an impact from a ballistic missile from last night. Alec, what can you tell us?
Right, Devo. So in the street behind me, on the road, there's a huge pothole, which is where that missile landed, causing extensive damage to 3 buildings over here. You can see some of the damage right over there. That was one of the buildings that was hit quite extensively. Very luckily, there were only 4 people lightly injured, no hospitalizations from this strike, although the damage goes out, as you may, in concentric circles out from the impact site. So here across the street, we see that there's glass shattered all over the place and destruction over here as well. We're talking about a warhead that was around 100 kilos payload, non-cluster munition like we've seen recently, but just a regular ballistic missile, as we call it. 100 kilos is actually not that much for ballistic missiles, so it just shows how extensive the damage can be, even from a smaller warhead that the Iranians launched here, causing this damage in Tel Aviv, but very luckily without any casualties or any serious injuries, Devo.
Quick, Alec, before we wrap up the broadcast, have you been talking to anybody on the ground? Has anybody seen, witnessed the event? Are they saying anything?
Right. People who were here, they say that they heard a very large explosion. That's what happens. Obviously, when you're on the site, it sounds extremely, extremely scary. The people who were here, they went to the shelter, which was life-saving in this case, because of the damage that was caused, because of the proximity of the strike. And that's just one of a series of salvos that the Iranians launched last night, early this morning. Despite a slight reduction in the amount of rockets that they fired, still able to score a hit here. A rocket that went through the Israeli interceptors was not intercepted and landed over here. So obviously a scary experience for the people who are here, but still, in the end of the day, quite lucky that the people did go to the shelter and that we didn't have any casualties from this event, but the damage to the buildings around me.
And yeah, the damage behind you, Alec, is definitely extensive, but with that, we do have to wrap up our broadcast. Thank you, Alec, for that report. We do have to wrap up. Thank you so much for watching ILTV on the Hour.
Tonight, I want to discuss the war behind the war. We're at a moment that, if we understand it properly, can tell us an enormous amount about where we are. On the very same day that Israel eliminates Ali Larijani, the de facto leader of the Iranian regime, a man with the blood of 32,000 people on his hands, the central figure in suppressing those Iranian protesters, and one of the architects of the regime's anti-American and anti-Israel aggression, on that very day, Joe Kent resigns. Now think about that contrast. On one side, Israel and the US are decapitating the leadership inside a regime that has spent decades building a terror empire across the Middle East. On the other side, inside the House of Washington, you have a senior counterterror official who steps down and points the finger, not at Iran, not at Hezbollah, not at ISIS, but at Israel. Now, this is not a coincidence. This is a window into a mindset because Joe Kent did not simply resign. He made a claim. He said that Syria, that country that was led as a terror regime that fell around a year ago, the place where his wife was unfortunately killed, was part of a war that traces back to Israel. In fact, he said it's Israel's war. Now let's deal with this seriously because this is where facts matter. His wife, Shannon Kent, was not a peripheral figure. This was a woman who was a senior chief petty officer in the United States Navy. She was part of an elite intelligence and special operations support